So shall we start? Do you think it's a good idea to start, Joseph?
Yeah, maybe let's give it a minute.
Yeah.
One more. Graceful 1 minute.
yeah. All right. So we are going to talk about how to manage your team effectively. I saw the list of attendees, and some of the guys are managing companies. I've seen a few CEOs there, some CTOs. So Joseph, we need to find some balance between talking to IT people, CTOs, and technical leaders, and to talk to business people. I've seen a few CEOs here. So it's just as a side note. All right, so let's kick it off. A brief introduction for those of you who don't know us. This is Michael here. I'm a talent advisor. I'm behind the Geek Recruiter project. We are rebranding these days, so that's why I mentioned both. I'm the ex-CTO at Toggl Quickly, which is where we have been working together with Joseph in Thailand. I have extensive experience managing IT teams, working from home, working remotely, and so does Joseph. He's a CTO at GuestReady these days. He also worked at Toggl Quickly as the VP of engineering. So again, lots of experience managing a fully remote team for the last 3 years. So I assume, Joseph, lots of your takeaways will be very practical. Lots of tips, right?
Definitely.
I'll
try.
Cool. So a quick agenda for the next 45 minutes or so. We will just go through a brief introduction, so we are all on the same page. We are going to discuss what new habits should you guys listening this and eventually also your team adopt. We are going to talk about the new responsibility of a manager. There will be space for Q&A, so your questions and Joseph's answers. And then we will talk about how can we help your team be more productive, because we have some coaching and consulting services. So you are also you will receive also handouts with some of the quotes, key takeaways, something that Joseph mentioned even during the preparation for this webinar. So I took some notes, and you will be able to download this, which is really cool. I encourage you to ask questions in chat, so you get most out of Joseph's experience, right? Because this is live. We are here to answer your questions, maybe even to help you with the current situation. So you can also describe it. Don't just write too much, but maybe one paragraph would be enough. Most of us work in Europe these days, and we work from home, which also brings some challenges, right? Children are jumping behind our backs and often singing "Five Little Monkeys Are Jumping on a Bed." Joseph, do you also know this song?
Definitely.
One fell off and bumped his head. Crazy, right? So while working on site with your team, you might not have even noticed that team members are just casually talking and discussing stuff, and this is quite important, right? Because this just happens somehow, right? During the normal working hours, people are just casually talking somewhere near the water cooler, and you as a manager might not have noticed that somehow subconsciously you see people working at their desks. So you just walk inside the office and you see people, you see who is working, you see when people come and leave. And this is all possible only when you meet people face to face. And while working on site, maybe you have not noticed that people just go for an unplanned lunch or a beer in the evening together, which again just somehow happens, right? Inside an office. And this usually seems normal. We don't even need to think about these activities. Often this goes unplanned. But the problem happens when we just go online suddenly, right? We are forced to work remotely, and we don't really plan these activities. We don't get ready for these activities. So this is what, Joseph, you will be talking about in a while, right? On the other hand, an office isolates us from family members, from daily chores, from the TV, and I can also see it myself, right? Like now I'm not isolated anymore because family members are all around the house. This is what it could look like in your colleagues' apartments, right? Someone is trying to work while watching TV, so the productivity could be lower. And also countless interruptions by little family members that make it even worse. Again, coming back to the song, right? Dancing monkeys. So this is what a casual day could look like. And I have two little children, Joseph as well. So I guess we both know this scene, even though it's neither Joseph nor me on the photo. But yeah, like this happens. So we need to find ways how to tackle this situation and how to be productive during these times. So for some, it may be really hard to adjust to remote work overnight. And the change from office work to remote work is hard, not just for employees, but also for managers. And now we are going to talk about what managers can do, right? So how to manage the team, how to get ready, what habits to adopt. And there are countless materials available online. That's obvious. It goes without saying on how to deal with remote work, right? Like lots of tips. But what really works? This is what we are going to find out from Joseph. What really works, Joseph? So I hand it over to you now. You can go through the slides. There's this button below the slide. So I leave it up to you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thanks for the introduction. And just maybe to complement the introduction, past 3 years, I'm managing a team of that is fully remote. At the moment, it's 18 people that are fully remote. There are no 2 people at the same location. So that's just my team, and the whole company, which is over 160 people, is actually across 7 distributed offices, with more than half of the people actually working remote. And the distributed offices are from London, Paris, Porto, Lisbon, Dubai, Hong Kong, Kuala Lumpur. So it's really even across time zones. So yeah, it's 160 people. So there is also a lot of experience going from like managing this kind of distributed workforce. So don't hesitate to ask any questions when you will be interested, as Michael said in chat. And yeah, I will try to answer from my experience. So I would start with my strong belief that actually this shift that we are forced to, everyone is forced to work from home. And some people may be struggling with it. And I really believe that it's full responsibility of the manager to help the whole team to adjust, adapt, and cope with the change that is there. Because I actually think that this kind of times, it's kind of a bit opening eye for some employers, some managers, that maybe it can work with a remote team. And we will see after this period, we will see a bit more home offices, a bit more remote work. So I think this kind of skills and how to deal with the remote work would be a really valuable skill to gain as a manager. Basically, the managers, the leaders of the team, I believe they need to be the ones that help the team to adjust. They are the ones that need to discuss with them what's the problem and kind of coach them even to overcome the challenges like screaming kids, like TV, and to actually help them to build the right habits. And obviously, first, you as a manager, you also need to build the right habits. It's you can read few kind of online sources and they just tell people to do these things that the online sources tell you, but if you don't do it, then you would not have the right experience and you won't have the right attitude also how to coach the people. And really it's the manager's responsibility. I think I cannot stress that enough, because there is nobody else. You cannot just tell people to work from home and be effective. I mean, there is a very big shift. If all of them were really used to work from office, it's really different setup, and not only kind of the actual setup that maybe you don't have your laptop or your setup with the standing desk and so on, but it's also the psychological setup that suddenly there is not this switch that you wake up, you do your morning routine, and you go somewhere to work. Because it kind of helps mentally to switch to the working mode, right? You suddenly come to the office and you are in working mode. And you are working from home, there is no such shift. And that's one skill that you also need to learn and teach, how to make this shift effectively at home. So that's actually one of the habits, how to make the shift from being at home while not working to being at home working, which you will, as Michal said, there is countless of tips online that you can read, and I think this is a bit kind of individual what works for everyone, because the classical tips you can read is that prepare yourself as if you would go to work. So just dress yourself, do the makeup, do all the routine that you do before you go to the office. Do that at home, and then just sit at your desk as you would in the office to help this mental shift. And that's, for example, I think that's a valid tip that never worked for me. I do work at home from my sweatpants, and I don't really change, because it doesn't give me. For me, it works like I can switch from work to non-work and from non-work to work very, very fast and without any issue. And but I think this really depends on individual. And again, you as a manager, you need to find out if the person that report to you, they are having the right habits, if they are actually struggling with it, and then help them with some tips. And the right habits also is kind of as on the team structure is the communication. I think Michal already mentioned that in the office environment, there is lots of implicit communication. There is a lots of communication just passing each other on the hallway or at the water cooler or having a lunch together, going for a beer. And those kind of interactions, there's lots of communication. That's kind of non-formal, right? But it's actually a lot of information is being exchanged. If everyone is remote, there is much less these situations where there could be this informal communication. So that basically means that you need to create a formal communication channels or exchanges. The over communication should be actually your default. Because if you just send a message on Slack, you cannot expect everyone reads it or everyone understands it. You need to ideally, if you want to communicate an important thing, you need to use different channels. You need to use email, Slack, and video call, and actually repeat the information multiple times. That's what I found out. Like in general, if you want to, as a manager, maybe you want to implement some changes in the team, or you want to kind of have some different processes and so on, you need to repeat yourself a lot, ideally in different channels, because people just treat different channels differently. Like some people just ignore email completely, if typically developers. Some people are just skimming through the messages, not really understanding. And only if you repeat enough, I think I read somewhere that you need to repeat at least 8 times the information to really reach the kind of the audience and really be ingrained in the team. And I think this is not only in the remote work, that's actually in general, especially in the bigger organizations. But with the remote work, you need to really make an effort to communicate everything. There is like some tips that I can see. What we do is, for example, we do every day there is a written status update. So that's kind of a stand-up, just a quick one online. so that it's clear to see who is working on what is the standards stand-up. If you are familiar with Scrum and its stand-ups, it's just quickly written what I have been working on, what I plan to work on tomorrow, and what maybe are my blockers. And this is, we have a special channel in Slack where everyone is every day writing these messages, which is just giving their status, right? It's also a bit accountability to see that if every day they need to kind of report the progress, then it's also a bit a push for them. And here again, as a manager, like what I saw, some typically developers, like they just say one thing, worked on refactoring this, you know, and basically that's, they are working on that for 2 days, and 3 days or 2 days they have the same message, right? So then it's they should provide more details. What was the actual progress? What is the problems that they encountered? So that it's actually valuable information. And that's again a manager's responsibility to coach the people to write the valuable updates. One technique that we do is coffee time chats. That is something that really helps when you have a bit bigger team or company. We saw these problems materialize when we reach about 50 to 70 people in the company. Then suddenly you don't have the interactions with everyone, and you may not know people that are there in the company. So to kind of mitigate this, we created some coffee time chats where basically randomly people were picked every week for 15-minute, 20-minute chat. We used some Slack integration that is pairing the people. So if you are using Slack, then you can just Google the coffee time Slack bot. There are several that are helping to facilitate this. And basically the goal of this is to actually, again, it's the extra effort to utilize some communication where there are no implicit communication happening. Because if you are in the office environment and there is a new joiner or there is somebody somebody from other team, generally when you go for lunch, it mingles sometimes, right? It's yeah, sometimes you do go with your coworkers, but sometimes there are other people. You may meet somebody at having a coffee, or like having more kind of random interactions, right? And then you kind of know people and so on. If you don't make an effort in remote work, then it may be that the person is communicating only with the closest coworker that he or she works with, and his or her boss, right? And nobody else, because there is maybe no need to communicate really with anyone else. The problem there is that if there is suddenly a need, the person doesn't know whom to reach, who is who does what, and so on. So these kind of informal chats really help. One thing that we actually started recently is I was trying to solve in my team specifically that how to kind of create a bit formal, not formal, but environment where we have a bit more team building. Because my team is from Brazil to Ukraine, across the time zones, and we try to meet at least once a year, but it's once a year, right, where we meet in person. So what, and in meantime, we basically discuss only in the smaller groups on the projects that we work on, then these people discuss together, but it's always work related. So what we started doing is happy hour calls, which is always Friday, 5 p.m. CET, because that's kind of in the middle. So that's it's Friday afternoon, and that's basically for 40 minutes to 1 hour call, where we do different things. Last Friday, we just played a word game or a trivia game. There are again some Slack bots, Slack integrations that you can install, and it's the Slack bot asks you a question, and the participants then just answer who is the fastest, gets points, and these kind of things. And there are like this games on Slack. There is a lot of them, and probably on the other chat applications, or also kind of online without the chat tools. So this was actually quite fun. It kind of created a bit, because we had really fun with it, because there were some funny situations, and we were able to discuss or just bond a bit more. even though it was fairly superficial, it was good, and everyone actually liked it really from the team. The week before, we just had kind of some topics to discuss, more like okay, it was about Corona actually, how is it in their country and so on. So not that positive, but it really depends on you what should be the content of these calls. It's important that it's non-working calls, that it's really something that is done kind of as you would go for a beer in the evening. We also mainly don't discuss beers. The one problem that at the moment I'm trying to figure out how to really resolve is if you are having a call with 6-10 people, the problem is that only one can generally speak, right? Where if you have 10 people sitting in a pub, and generally you have like 5-6 discussions simultaneously going on between the 2 people, 3 people, and it's much more kind of interactive, right? That's something that's really, really, I didn't yet figure out how to replicate in the online environment. So yeah, it's something that I'm trying to figure out and see, but at the moment, if not that much luck. Yeah, another habit that I mean, when I talk with some managers, which I do, like when we come to it, like one-on-ones, like quite a lot of managers know what are one-on-ones, what they should do on one-on-ones, and so on. But it's also like that they are quite busy and they cancel them a lot. And I think in remote, it's even more important to not cancel them, but actually have them and reschedule. If it's clashing with something, obviously, I also sometimes like there is a board meeting. You cannot move board meeting, right? So you either cancel your one-on-one that was at that time, or you move the one-on-one, which I always do. I never cancel it because I think these communications are really important, because there is no other time when you can have really this quality communication, because you won't meet the person at the hallway, or you don't commute together where you can discuss things. So definitely always have the one-on-ones. And I would definitely, with direct reports, like for example, I do have with all my direct reports, which is 9 people, I have a weekly half-an-hour call. With some more senior ones, I have an hour long, because that is basically with the more senior people, there is usually much more to discuss, because it's broader than their own kind of performance and feeling, but it's maybe about how they managing their team and so on. And then with indirect reports, that's kind of reports of my reports. I generally have every month, I have a half-an-hour call. And that's something that kind of helps me to keep the understanding how also the managers that report to me are doing, and also how the people kind of that are not directly reporting to me. And because we are remote, I don't really have a chance to discuss with them, because I don't work on projects with them. I don't have the weekly one-on-one, so I don't really know how they are feeling, what they are doing, what's their dissatisfactions. Ideally, their manager should kind of handle that. But sometimes for me, it's definitely good to know that there is some issue, or that something is not right. And you get the feeling if you have this skip level meetings. And I hope panic button. It seems Michal dropped, but can you confirm in chat that you can hear me? If it's only my Michal. Okay. Yeah. Hopefully you can hear me, and it's probably on the Michal side. Okay, good. Thanks. About the one-on-ones, and I don't really know what you do on your one-on-ones, but I think it's much more important to focus on how the employee that is new to the home office or remote working, how they are coping with it. Ask questions. Ask a lot of questions, like what is their daily routine, how they feel, what problems they have, and be really kind of empathetic, because it's people won't tell you that they tend to watch TV during work. You know, it's just you need to kind of like indirectly figure this out, that they are maybe not coping that right. And this is really something that is hard to kind of give you direct tip, because this a bit depends on your approach as a manager and how you discuss with people. I would definitely suggest to you to think about what questions to ask to kind of go deeper, not just superficial. How you are doing? Well, okay, what next? Is it everything okay? Yes, everything is okay. That's, if you ask like this, you will always get kind of the shallow answer, right? You need to ask, okay, so what was the things that you worked today, like maybe work, and how did you feel while working? Did you feel productive or not? Was there a problem in the morning to start working? Or like you ask a bit more pointed questions to figure out, because it's new. Probably unless you already have a remote working culture, it's new and it's not trivial. If they are failing in adjusting to remote work, it's not completely their work if they are completely new to it. They were basically, by outside events, they were thrown into it, right? And just for example, like we are now with my wife and kids staying at our grandparents' house. So we are all together. And Lucy's mother, who is 58 years old, she has a home office, right? For last 40 years, she didn't know what the home office is, right? Her home office is that she takes care of our kids. That's her home office, okay? So, because she doesn't know what to do, right? When she's home, she's home, and that's home for her. That's not working. So she takes 3 phone calls during the day, and the rest is basically taking care of the kids. That's a bit extreme. I hope that not you don't have as many employees as that. But yeah, that's something that you need to really figure out. And yeah, it really depends then also technical setup. Do they have good internet at home? Do they have a good laptop? All right, because maybe you have workstation in your office and they don't have even a laptop. So they maybe didn't even tell you that they don't have a laptop, so they cannot work, right? But then that really then depends on your specific circumstance. And this is exactly the things that you need to figure out during the one-on-one.
And now Joseph disconnected. Joseph connected? Joseph? Yeah, now I see you back. Good.
I accidentally hit the back button in the browser.
Cool.
Okay. For remote work, I think actually any generally good management practices apply. So if you have a good managerial practices, you do one-on-ones, you take care of the people, you take ownership, you figure out problems, you solve problems, all the kind of standard good management, then actually that directly applies to remote work. It's just, I would say the bad management practices are amplified. They are much more kind of serious because there is no this outside pressure that help the people to figure out how to do the remote work right. Few just practical tips. You probably will have a lot of video calls. If you don't have video calls, have video calls. Don't have just phone calls or yeah, what else? It's the video is super important. And in my case, like the video, actually the whole company policy is video is by default on any call. It's we don't enforce it because there are valid reasons why not to have a video call. Like for example, bad connection, right? That's, I mean, if you have bad connection and it's all lagging, it's better to have at least voice instead of video. But it should be not default to be without video. Video is really like if you have a calls without video, it feels kind of strange. And by the way, one reason that I found out why people are reluctant to turn on video is because they want to multitask. Actually, that's especially on a meetings that like all hands meetings or maybe slightly bigger meetings, not on one-on-ones obviously, but on meetings where is at least 3 people. people sometimes tend to not turn on video because they do want to multitask. They want to do something else during the call because they feel like, yeah, it's maybe not that relevant. And the question is why they should be there. And this is something that I try to kind of discourage. And it's also something, if they have a video and they still multicast, you can actually pretty clearly see it, that they don't really pay attention, or they are chatting with somebody. And that's, I really strongly kind of then follow up, because it's not something that leads to good and productive meetings, online meetings. I was already saying the regular touch points in Scrum, it's called stand up. So what we do in my team, we basically have 3 times a week. You have a 15 to 30-minute call where it's kind of like discussing any issues. Like we have one longer one on Monday where we discuss more issues. Like recently, it was more about kind of the things that we were doing around the coronavirus and how it affects our business and what we need to do and so on. But it's also kind of maybe a bit more technical discussions, and it's kind of the team restructures and new practices in the team and so on. Because I'm very open with discussing with my team any changes that I want to do in the team. But then during the week, it's more about anything else, actually. So what we find out is in the beginning, we did kind of the standard stand-ups where everyone says, okay, I was doing this, I will be doing that, and nothing is blocking me. That's general answer. They generally don't say what's blocking them. That's my finding. And I found out that's not really valuable, especially if you have more people. Like my team is 18 people. Like having one each, it really takes like 30 minutes at least to go through that stand-up. And the problem is that if one person is giving an update, probably maximum 3 people actually understand the context, what that person is working on, because it's really detailed, right, what they are working on. So instead, we started doing a bit different type of kind of stand-ups where we use it for also more detailed sharing what each person is working on. So it's generally we have 2 people in that half an hour that are speaking, and each person is having 15 minutes to describe in more context what they are working on. And we use this as kind of information sharing platform, but also education. That in my team, sometimes we had a problem that the developers were a bit specialized in their area where they were working on, and didn't have a broader view of what is happening in the other parts of the team. So that's something that we found is quite useful to share the understandings of the different parts of the system. But you can do anything, basically. The important here to actually have the regular touch point, to actually see each other at least like 2 to 3 times a week. Yeah, that's one D&D on Slack or any other chatting platform. Like I'm surprised every single time. So what I do with every single new joiner to my team, I actually have a call with them in the beginning and actually walk them through the online hygiene. So it's a bit simple thing to check, like that they do have a good online hygiene, that they don't have sound notifications either on laptop or mobile, that they turn off email notifications, that they kind of check they are not distracted by every single Slack message, because it drives me crazy when I have a video call with someone and that is on the background always ding, 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 ding. And with some people, that's almost like nonstop. And I really like hate that because that's so distracting. And there are other things like that they do have some decent working environment, that yeah, some basics of the how to work remotely, because some people that I hire, they maybe start to work remotely only like with my company before they were visiting an office. So with those, I kind of have in the beginning a bit more touch points to actually coach them to make sure that they learn and build the right habits for the remote work. Yeah, and this is something important that I don't expect people to answer to me or be available all the time throughout the day or even in specific hours. Obviously, if there is a meeting which is always happening through the calendar, that's maybe another tip. Use calendar rigorously for everything. Everything needs to be scheduled in the calendar for the team. And the thing is that if you have time zones, then it's obvious, right? There is no 9 to 5, because 9 to 5 means for everyone something else. But it's also like there are things that I, for example, like to work in the morning, like from 6 a.m. to maybe 7 if kids give enough time, then to 8. And then I want to go for a run or do some workout, and only start 10:30, 11 actually, and then end whenever I can. But it's something that I kind of learned and had the team to adjust to, in terms of that not everyone is always online, and not everyone is always available, and it's not also expected for everyone to be that, because that it sometimes tends to be kind of that people feel like if I message them at 10 p.m. because I just wanted to work on something, then they have to answer. So that's, I told them, it really depends on every single person when they want to work. If they want to work 9 to 5, fine. If they want to work, I had one person who was working 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. And yeah, sometimes it makes it difficult, but then it's we need to deal with that, because that's also the benefit of remote work, that they can choose when they work. And this is something that you can try to, basically everyone should maybe track their time. We tried this, I think it was, I always do it maybe every half a year. I have everyone start tracking their time for one week, to kind of see. I actually don't check it ever. I never check what they tracked. It's more about that what it showed is that people that are not used to track their time, they suddenly kind of see where kind of their time goes. And it's, I think, good from time to time to actually kind of force them to do it as a practice, to see, and it trains a bit their productivity, I think. Yeah, this is connected with when people work. It's we use it's like kind of check-in, check-out system. So when basically when a person starts working, they just check in, and they stop working, they check out. So then when you want to see like somebody's not answering, you can check, okay, they checked out, and so on. So it's kind of to keep track who is working when. Yeah, I'm not sure. This is
a question to you, Joseph.
Okay.
We have some more questions in the chat window, but this was my question when I was working on the slides, and I was thinking, like, we should over communicate, but how do we actually know we already over communicate, or should we again double the number of communication or the level of communication?
You don't know. At least I never know. Like it never happened to me that I would have feeling, okay, this is way too much. I think I never had the feeling that that is way too much, and I think I communicate quite a lot. What is kind of maybe a signal is that people start to tell you that you are annoying. That's maybe a way, like a signal, definitely. But in remote, it's really, especially if you want to reach kind of more people, then the more time you repeat the information, the more success you will have with ingraining it and making sure that it's understood. And there are things like that should be actually communicated all the time, like the basics like values and these kind of things that I kind of do communicate these things mainly on the one-on-ones with when I give some feedbacks, that I do this quite often, not that much in the broad sense that I would communicate to the whole company or to the whole team, like that they are doing, they should be doing something differently, or yeah. But definitely everything that we do is so for example, if we implement some change for my team, like now we did some restructure because we had to lay off some people, and it's always kind of communication to the whole team, to the individuals, to the smaller groups of the people, and it's repeating. It's in email, it's in Slack, and it's more channels, so that I make sure that people do understand. I always try to use somewhat different phrasing, because that kind of also helps to nail the information down.
It's like marketing, right? You just keep repeating the same all over again, just with a slightly different angle.
Right. Yeah, and I think this all from me, and maybe Michal. So how would you suggest managers survive this transition that we are going through now?
Yeah. I mean, it's not easy because you know, like you already know this all, right? So for you it is easy, but for those who are just transitioning, it just may seem overwhelming. But I would say at the end of the day, it comes down to the engagement and the productivity. We want people to be engaged. They should know what they are working on, what they are supposed to work on, what they are supposed to deliver, what their KPIs. They should, you know, live and breathe the company into some healthy extent, and they should be productive. You know, we want our team members to deliver, not to be like your mother-in-law, right? Just answering three phone calls during the whole day. Yeah. So the way I'm looking at it is always some scale, right? The team's productivity on site is probably higher due to different reasons. The team may be already used to working on site. They meet face to face. They quickly solve any issues, right? So I'm looking at it on some scale. And now, you know, that team's productivity may be decreasing due to some of the aforementioned reasons, like lack of alignment on what we are supposed to work on, these distractions, maybe even insecurity. You, Joseph, also mentioned some layoffs. So it could be also in our mind, you know, this fear or the mindset, because sometimes I also observe it on myself. You know, I'm just sitting at home, I'm sitting on a sofa, and sometimes I'm just walking out of the window, right? Because maybe I don't perceive it as a productive environment. And I'm working, you know, remotely or at home in different environments for several years. So I just can wonder how much more difficult this is for people who are just thrown into this kind of environment where they are supposed to work at home. And the team's productivity could be low if there is no strategy, if this is just ad hoc. I was talking to one of the business owners recently. He was working with different freelancers in different countries, and he didn't really have anything, you know, in place as you described, Joseph. Like they didn't have camera on during the call, so people were just you know, disengaged, not very productive. So he was actually quite frustrated. He read a few articles online, but eventually he struggled to actually implement it. So the way I'm looking at it, like how can we shift the team's productivity to the other spectrum of the scale, where there are much more best practices in place, employees are pulling in the same direction and eventually hitting targets, delivering software if we are talking about IT teams, meeting KPIs. So I would say, like what you described, Joseph, reminds me of this like well-managed team where you know how it or what it should look like, what are the best practices, how it works, and you have some like mental model in mind, right? So my two takeaways would be to make sure that the team collaborates, and then obviously the question is how should the team collaborate, and the second takeaway would be that they spend enough productive time working for the business. So the productive time is quite important. It's bold here. Like they shouldn't just spend time like 9 to 5 or whatever, 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. or 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. It should be productive time. So the question that comes to my mind, like how do we actually make sure that the team collaborates and spends this productive time? And then what you, for example, mentioned are some events. Some of them are recurring, some of them are daily, some of them are weekly, some of them are maybe monthly or quarterly. But these events make the team and the company successful at the end of the day, right? Like stand-ups that help the alignment and information transfer. They also help people to be accountable because they are supposed to say what they worked on, right? The weekly performance meetings, the one-on-one reviews, Joseph mentioned a few times, interviews with candidates, maybe not as many these days, while companies are maybe laying off instead of hiring, but yeah, like sooner or later this will come again. All hands presentations, team presentations, pair coding sessions, like all these events are to be mastered by teams that want to collaborate and be productive. So like now the question is, can we help boost your team's productivity? You guys are watching this presentation. You are here. If you have any question, there is still some time to answer your questions. If you struggle with anything in your current team, in how you work, maybe now is the time to ask a question to Joseph. Obviously, every team is unique. With Joseph, we are introducing the productivity booster. So what the productivity booster is, we are thinking like how to make all these events, all these touch points productive. So productive stand-ups, productive weekly performance meetings. And this is so much different when it is done online compared to all these events, all these touch points happening on site. So productive team presentations, productive pair coding sessions, productive brainstorming workshops. And it's likely there will be only more and more of these online presentations, online meetings, online code reviews, online project planning meetings. So it's good to master these events. So we can help individuals and businesses. For individuals, we organize remote team coaching. And Darius asked the question, so I'll answer in a sec. And for businesses, we offer consulting services. So I'll wrap it up, and Darius, I'll answer your question, or maybe Joseph can read it meanwhile. So if you are a manager and you want to organize great online meetings, and not just some meetings, but those I enumerated. So it's stand-ups, it's code reviews, it's pair coding sessions, it's all hand meetings, it's all those 9 or 10 different kinds of meetings. While the team is working remotely, we can coach you and train you one-on-one. So if you are a manager, if you are a team leader, as a result, you will lead a team like a professional. And your value on the market will just increase, because, as soon as you will be looking for the next job, maybe after the crisis, this will be, a walk in the park for you, because as soon as you can say, for example, as Joseph, with confidence that you can deliver great online presentations, you know how to facilitate online brainstorming sessions, if you can do perfect one-on-ones and stand-ups and everything, like this is a great skill. This is like superb skill to master these days and going forward. And if you run a business and you want your team to be more productive, then we can certainly work with the whole team, with your team members. We can observe, give feedback, and as you've most likely noticed, Joseph has some mental model in place, so he can just cross-check where your team is and how, what should be the next logical step. Especially if Joseph would be, say, leading this team, like what would he do? Maybe he would just organize this, how he called this online hygiene meeting where he explains step by step what the person should adopt. Or we can integrate some solutions, help you set up some new tools, like the one we mentioned about time tracking or project planning or whatever. And as a result, your team will be more productive. They will collaborate and they will pull together in a single direction, which is super important these days. So obviously you can read countless blog posts, but often the most value comes from discussions with someone who has been there and done that, like Joseph or I, who have been working with remote teams in the past, managing mostly IT people, which reminds me that today we haven't spoken too much about IT in particular, but maybe we could do in some follow-up session, Joseph, like how to to do some of these sessions with developers, how to keep track of their progress, how to do performance review with developers. But generally, all these apply also for different maybe even agencies, like recruitment agencies. I've seen some of the attendees are from the recruitment business. Okay, so if you would like to learn more about these services, you can go to setupremoteteam.com and schedule a quick call where we can assess how can we help you as an individual manager or your business with some consulting. So you can click the link that you can see either on the right side or below, and a calendar window will open up. So you can schedule this call. It's either Joseph or me who will hop on a call with you, like really quick call, 15 minutes, where we discuss if there is anything that we could possibly help you with. So now I'm coming back to Dario's question. How do you manage human conflicts in a remote team when it comes to culture and time difference? Joseph, this is a question for you. And you are on mute, maybe I forgot to mention.
That's a good point, definitely. So actually, my question is, how do you manage it in on-site, right? And that should be your basis, because it's kind of the same. How do you manage a conflict in the team when you are on site? You probably discuss it with each party, whoever is in the conflict. You maybe discuss it with them together, and you try to figure out what's the core of the conflict and mitigate that, I assume, right? That's what I would do. And in remote, it's basically the same. I do a schedule call with one party. I do schedule call with another party. I try to understand what's the root cause, what is causing it, what could be the mitigations, and then I either implement these things that should help, because sometimes it's misunderstandings. Quite a lot of time, the conflicts are due misunderstandings because people did not communicate enough together. And if I, as a mediator, kind of step in and explain to one or the other party view, suddenly it actually de-escalates the conflict a lot. Or what I do is I put them all, three of us, basically to one call. And again, I serve as a mediator to what in on-site, what you do, you pull them to a meeting, quick meeting, to discuss this thing, right? So it's in the end, it's not a difference. And time difference, I think that really doesn't play any role much how to kind of resolve it, because you need to just adjust to the time difference with scheduling these calls, right? And the culture, it depends what is the culture that the remote employee is actually understanding, because I didn't mention that, but keeping a good culture in the remote team, that's also pretty challenging, right? Because you don't have this on-site place where you kind of, as a new joiner, you kind of see what's the culture, right? In the office. On the remote team, you see it from how people message in Slack or in other chatting tools, what they tell on the video calls, what are the supporting kind of materials, and based on that, you kind of you make some idea you have some idea what is the culture of that company, right? And it could be grossly misunderstood, the company culture, because maybe the company is not expressing their culture well, right? And that really depends. And then again, the manager is there to clarify any things and figure out that there is some misalignment, and ideally fix this communication of what is the culture. Because the culture, what is culture in general, right? It's some set of behaviors of everyone in the company, some accepted behaviors, some not accepted behaviors, what is not allowed and not kind of suggested. And this all creates the culture. And it's just, I see it really kind of the same as in the on-site. So if you have some experience of deconflicting in office, just do the same. Just adjust to having calls instead of in-person meeting, definitely video calls. That's important, because then you can actually see the person, you can see the facial expressions, you can see how they react to it. because this is something when you have just a phone call or without video, you just hear the voice. It's by far not enough, especially in the conflict resolutions. And over communicate. That's maybe the last.
Over communication. This helps a lot. I at this point I would like to share the handouts. So hopefully you guys can see the handouts, these slides and the key takeaways. Joseph, you mentioned also a few more interesting things that are not in the handouts PDF document. So I guess I'll just send a follow-up email to all the attendees. So if you guys have any question, you can still write it in chat. Darius wrote, "Okay, thanks," to Joseph. If any of you have one more question, now is the time to ask. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up in about 30 seconds. Joseph, what's your plan for tonight?
For tonight in the evening?
Yeah. With this quarantine where you cannot just go anywhere.
Just go home and play with kids, put them to bed, and go to bed myself because I woke up at 4:30 today. I was woke up by one of the kids today, 4:30. So.
Oh, 4:30. That's so early. All right, cool. So no more questions in chat. So why don't we wrap it up, guys? You can go to setupremoteteam.com. If there's anything we can help you with, we would be pleased to help you either with some coaching. Miroslav says, "Thanks for the great webinar, guys." Thanks, Miro. Hope to see you soon again in Bratislava. And for businesses, we have this consulting in place where we can look under the hood of your business, do some assessment, cross-check it with some of these best practices, deliver some report, and help your team adopt these best practices, because that's what matters at the end of the day. And over communication solves everything. All right, cool. Joseph, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for being
everyone
out here. And yeah, let's keep in touch. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.